Hey folks, I'm just going to look into some scriptures, eschatological scriptures. So this is a prophetess. This is a Sibyl. This is a Sibyl from possibly the time of the repatriation of the Jews under Cyrus the Great. But this would be from a Sibyl, possibly an Erythraean Sibyl or a Cumaean Sibyl. I'm not sure. I've just scrolled through and we're seeing. I've just looked at what's interesting about this and see where it leads to. So the text starts, then a holy prince will gain control of the scepters of the whole world for all ages, he who raised the dead. This is obviously Christ. Christ crucified, all the kingdoms of the nations became his for all ages, for eternity. He who raised the dead, Christ is the resurrection. Then we have the Most High will lead three, then, in piteous fate at Rome, and all men will perish in their own dwellings. So there's a footnote here, which is always handy to see if we can glean any more information from that, which was Y. So if I big this up, let's big up Y. It says the precise reference of the three is not possible to determine. The verse is clearly modelled on something else where the reference was to the second triumvirate. We may also compare the three heads of the eagle in 4 Ezra 11 to 12. Commodian, Carmen, Apologeticum 871 says that the returned Nero adopts two Caesars, and in 911 the Antichrist slays three kings. We may conclude that three Romans figure widely in apocalyptic traditions, but their role and precise reference may vary. I'm favouring this one here. Antichrist slays three kings. Which is, I mean, it was for me, it was a big revelation for me to understand who these three were, because in the book of Daniel, it says, he shall, what was it? It's like he shall something three kings, yeah? Let's see if that comes up on the search. That's this one. Subdue. That's what I couldn't think of the word. Why couldn't I think of subdue? I kept thinking of them being subordinate, but he basically kills them. So we're finding out who the Antichrist is. Antichrist shall come. Daniel 7:25. Are we looking for the context verse here? Right. It's the previous verse, 24. It says, and the 10 horns are 10 kings who will rise from this kingdom. After them, another king, different from the earlier ones, will rise and subdue three kings. Okay. So again, what's interesting for me is this Sibyl is prophesying at a similar time to Daniel. Daniel's prophesying in Babylon, whereas the Sibyls are in the kingdoms of the Gentiles. If we take this verse and we type in the answer, because I know this is the answer, what we're getting now is we're getting historic value, we're getting prophecy and the manifestation of prophecy. And what happens a lot of the time with false prophets is they keep people within the veil of prophecy. So you're never understanding it, and they give you a false exegesis. So, like with history, I was never somebody who was interested in history until I started reading the Bible. And then I realized by reading the book of Daniel, I needed to know some history. So I kind of studied history in a sense of what I needed to know. I know what I need to know. I don't really go into the real big, huge, history is just absolutely enormous. But a Bible-related history is a kind of a smaller aspect. So we're looking at Constantine the Great, who is the Antichrist that Daniel prophesied of, who subdues 3 kings. So this is the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, took place between the Roman emperors Constantine I and Maxentius. So he is one of the 3 who was subdued. Roman emperor who reigned from 306 until his death in 312. So what happens is you had East and West Roman empires. Constantine united them. He defeated these 3, Maxentius, Maximian, and Licinius, and he was the sole emperor of East and West at this time. So it takes its name from the Milvian Bridge, an important route over the Tiber. Constantine won the battle and started on the path that led him to end the Tetrarchy. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. He ends the Tetrarchy. Let's pick this up because this is important for us all to know. Okay, I have to click on it. I've got my text enlarged so people can see in the video. So we need to study the Roman Empire, to work out what the prophecies are concerning the Roman Empire, the beast. So here we go. Look, here it is. Okay, Maxentius Maximian as usurpers 306 to 308. Those are 2 of the 3. Licinius was the other one who's here. Look, Licinius. So, well, that's quite a lot of info. Tetrarchy was the system instituted by Diocletian in 293 AD to govern the ancient Roman Empire by dividing it between 2 emperors, the Augusti and their junior colleagues, and designating successors the Caesars. Initially, Diocletian chose Maximian as his Caesar in 285, raising him to co-Augustus the following year. Maximius was to govern the western provinces and Diocletian would administer to the eastern ones. Okay, so here we go into the answer. The orderly system of 2 senior and 2 junior rulers endured until Constantius died in July 306, and his son Constantine was unilaterally acclaimed Augustus and Caesar by his father's army. So this is Constantine the Great. This is the Antichrist. Here he is. Maximian's son, Maxentius, contested Severus's title, styled himself Princeps Invictus. Invictus is invincible, isn't it? And was appointed Caesar by his retired father in 306. Severus surrendered to Maximian and Maxentius in 307. Maxentius and Constantine were both recognized as Augustine by Maximian that same year. Galerius appointed Licinius Augustus for the West in 308 and elevated Maximinus Daza to Augustus in 310. Constantine's victory over Maxentius at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312 left him in control of the western part of the empire, while Licinius was left in control of the east on the death of Maximinus Daza, or is it Datha? In Spain that would be pronounced Datha. Constantine and Licinius jointly recognized their sons Crispus Constantine II and Licinius II as Caesars in March 317. Ultimately, the Tetrarchic system lasted until 324, when mutually destructive civil wars eliminated most of the claimants to power. Licinius resigned as Augustus after losing the Battle of Chrysopolis, leaving Constantine in control of the entire empire. So we got there in the end. This is the conclusion of the prophecy, whereby we know that the prophecy of the subduing of the three kings in Rome leads us to the conclusion of this is the Antichrist that was prophesied who would come. Go back to some of these prophecies, like the one by the Sibyl. So the three are led in piteous fate at Rome, is what we read about. Maxentius, Maximian, and Licinius. So it carries on and says, but they will not be persuaded, which would be much better, but whenever there rises upon all the evil day of famine and pestilence hard to bear and tumult, and then again the former wretched Lord will assemble the council and deliberate how he will destroy. So let's check out Z. Nero. So it's saying references to the 10 horns of the beast. Nero is the first horn of the beast. This prophecy seems to say Nero returned, that was what Z was referencing. He will assemble the council and deliberate how he will destroy. So we're talking about now the horns of the beast. Assemble the council. So we've just had prophecy about the three kings perishing because the little horn subdued them. How he will destroy. What's A2 say? I'm not sure about that explanation there. I mean, that reminds me of the Council of Nicaea. 325. This is the kind of time frame that the prophecies, the application of the prophecy is related to. The withered will bloom, appearing together with leaves. The floor of heaven will rain on the hard rock. Shower and flame and many breezes on the earth, and an abundance of poisonous seeds throughout the whole earth. But they will act again with shameless spirit, not fearing the wrath of God or of men, abandoning modesty, desiring shamelessness, tyrants in fickleness, and violent sinners. liars, lovers of faithlessness, evildoers, truthful in nothing, breakers of faith, ingenious at pouring out slander. They will not have surfeit of wealth, but shamelessly they will collect more. Under the sway of tyrants they will perish. This really reminds me of what Paul says. About perilous times. You know, if the screen locks up, we've got to just be patient. It's not a very good computer I use. I don't have the means to buy an excellent, quick computer. So I mean, we just got to be patient with this. So if we look at perilous times, shall come. For in the last days, perilous times shall come. Two Timothy 3. So, you know, a lot of people appropriate this was, again, another false, the main false eschatological doctrine that is in the false church system is futurism, which was invented by Francisco Ribera. Which says that the last days or the end times are just for either 3 years or 7 years before the coming of Christ. But we can see if we interpret the prophecy correctly, we can come to more of a fuller understanding about what we're dealing with, what we're being taught by the prophets and the apostles. But understand this: in the last days, terrible times will come, for men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, without love of God, treacherous, traitorous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. Turn away from such as these. So, I mean, if we look at like online, there's a lot of videos about narcissists. You know, people who struggle with narcissistic parents, who've been, they've suffered a lot of damage mentally from people who have persecuted them and you know, made them a scapegoat. That seems to be the psychiatric terminology for the perpetrator and the victim. It's the narcissist and the scapegoat. And so these are the terrible times of the last days. Lovers of pleasures rather than lovers of God. You know, and you can go into 2 Thessalonians 2nd chapter, which I'm always seem to be referencing all the time. But you know, again with the prophecies, you know, this one of Paul is before 63 AD, we know, because he was martyred then. And then this one, you're looking at around 600 BC. So, you know, 650 years before. Then we have all the stars will fall directly into the sea, all in turn, and men will call a shining comet the star, a sign of much impending toil, war and slaughter. Is that wormwood? Because I haven't really revised this video, I'm just gone straight into it. Okay. I'm just trying to perfect what I know, and I'm recording it. Revelation 8:11, the name of the star is wormwood. A third of the waters turned bitter, and many died from the waters that became bitter. So let's look at the whole chapter again, Revelation 8. Kind of similar to the seven bowls of wrath, which is Revelation 16, which I've been studying a lot lately, which I've got some more updates on that pertaining to maybe the first bowl. So this is the opening of the seven seals. Okay, and it was verse 11 where we had that. First angel sounds. You see, this the way that this is written in this vision of the apocalypse. You know, it was taken on by the false church after the Antichrist came that there was going to be a literal appropriation to Scripture, whereas previously this was not the case in the Ante-Nicene Church. Even Origen's the big proponent of an exegesis in a spiritual sense, which is what I favour, but I don't go along with Origen's amillennialist approach. I'm a premillennialist, which I do believe in a literal 1,000-year reign at the second coming. So we have the second trumpet. So the first trumpet is blood and fire and hail, burning up trees and grass. The second angel, there's a great mountain thrown into the sea. The sea turns to blood. So like this can't work in a literal sense, this text, and that's why these deceivers like Ribeiro, when they write their false exegesis on Antichrist, because they want to divert the attention away from who the Antichrist is, then it becomes this is literal, it hasn't happened yet. You can see from the language this never happened. But if we appropriate an actual way of interpreting the vision in terms of, well, this is kind of showing that there's wrath coming down on the earth, there's wars, there's famines. This is what the way really I think the vision is directing the reader. The third angel sounds his trumpet, and a great star burning like a torch fell from heaven and landed on a third of the rivers and the springs of water. The name of the star is wormwood. The waters turn bitter like wormwood oil. Many people die from the bitter waters. How do we interpret this one? I mean, it could be apostasy. If that's not literal, it could be apostasy. What does it say here? That all the stars will fall directly into the sea, and in turn, men will call a shining comet the star, a sign of much impending toil, war, and slaughter. So here it's appropriating the star. It's appropriating the star with impending toil, war, and slaughter. Okay, let's keep going with this. See what the Sibyl keeps prophesying. What I loved about the last video I did about the Sibyl was where I learned that the Sibyl went to that last king of Rome and said, "Give me 300 didrachms for this prophecy," and the king refused, and so she threw it in the fire. And it's like, we know, I've been saying 300 is the number of the cross. So, may I not be alive when the abominable woman reigns? We know who that is. It says here, the abominable woman. D2, this is not a reference to a historical figure, but to an eschatological one modelled on the whore of Babylon. That's who it is. So we're getting to this answer of the last days, that the whore of Babylon. See, the Sibyl is prophesying about this star falling, which in Revelation it's called wormwood, I believe. And then, may I not be like when the abominable woman reigns. We know that the Antichrist, 325 AD Council of Nicaea, starts Nicene Christianity, not the same. Constantine is based in Constantinople, which was previously Nicomedia. And then we have, in the West, the Western Roman Empire, we have the Germanic people start migration into other areas of the Roman Empire. They get displaced because the Huns become powerful. It displaces people like the Visigoths and the Vandals. They all start moving around, and this eventually causes the collapse of the Roman Empire, because the Germanic people become stronger and take over ultimately. Also, there was other problems with the plagues and inflation. So we have here the whore of Babylon. But rather than when heavenly grace comes to rule, and whenever a sacred child, the destroyer of all, destroys the malignant abyss with bonds, opening it up, suddenly a wooden house will cover men round about. But when the 10th generation is within the house of Hades, thereafter the power of the female will be great. So I'm liking this idea of this female. Power of the female will be great. Now what that means is, specifically we saw there that the whore of Babylon, which is the Church of Rome, specifically the Church of Rome, it's this second beast of Revelation 13, which is called Behemoth. So we know Behemoth, Solomon, I call it, will have great power, as it says here, through the Sibyl. The power of the female is great, but we know that also with the two worlds, this present world's female, because whatever a woman brings forth perishes, and so it's a perishing realm. It's called the temporal kingdom of Christ, which was also mentioned by the prophet Baruch. But we know that the future world is male, and we're told this by Peter. So the present is like a female bringing forth sons, but the future is like a father receiving sons. God himself will increase many evils for her when she is crowned and receives royal honor. The entire year will be an age turned upside down. The sun, seeing dimly, shines at night. Stars will leave the vault of heaven, a raging storm with many a hurricane will lay the earth desolate. There will be a resurrection of the dead, and most swift racing of the lame. And the deaf will hear, the blind will see, those who cannot speak will speak, and life and wealth will be common to all. The earth will equally belong to all, not divided by walls or fences, and will then bear more abundant fruits. It will give fountains of sweet wine and white milk and honey. Then there's some text missing. The judgment of the immortal God. But when God changes the times, making winter summer, then the oracles are fulfilled. When the world perishes, there's text missing. So basically, we're going from the reign of the Antichrist to the end of the reign of the Antichrist. We got some footnotes here. The entire year will be an age turned upside down, which is F2. And then we had the destroyer, which was E2. So F2 and E2. E2 is, the reference is to the iron scepter, Revelation 12:5, and the subsequent destruction role of the Messiah in Revelation 19:21.
It's a treasure chamber.